Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are again, another Saturday show. And I know how eagle-eyed our friend from Germany will be, James. So he will realise that it's actually a Sunday. Okay, so James, this is a Sunday, my friend. So I apologise for a little bit of delay for myself and Stephen. But to everybody listening, thank you again, as always. And we've got a few interesting little snippets to talk about today. So first and foremost, Stephen, lovely to see you back home.
Thank you, Chris.
Myself as well. I got back in from Spain yesterday. So in quarantine now, and looking forward to my test tomorrow morning early, and then my 5th day test on Thursday to get out again. So looking forward to it. However, I've got to share something with you. I had the most painful experience I have had of my adult life. Okay. And I've had quite a few investigative...
But a few knocks and breaks over the years.
Knocks and breaks and probes, yeah. I had this lunatic of a doctor who was doing the test, and we were in an outside area, so there was just a little screen. He was making a fortune. There's so many people getting their test done, but you could see the person's legs and hands, but nothing else behind the screen. And he was doing it, and he was doing it so painfully. People were shuddering, they were making yelps, they were all gagging, their legs were being lifted up. So knowing that you're going next was terrible. And I just thought to myself, it can't be that bad. I nearly choked. And then when he started doing it up the nose, honest to God, I felt as if you could see it behind my eyes like white windscreen wipers. It was absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. Don't know what on earth was the matter with him.
Well, I hope, and I'm sure you will, because you like documenting these issues. I'm sure you'll write to the Spanish health authorities accordingly. But firstly, if your house was in the Balearics, Chris, as mine, you would be able to come in on the green list next week with no quarantine.
Yes.
So that is a good step forward. But I think this testing, let's call it testing malarkey, it's a bit of a cottage industry.
Yep.
And I think, and what I saw, I had a test last week coming back in from Palma, and it was a pop-up clinic,
yes,
sort of just open next to the pasteleria, at the side of the road.
Yep.
And at 35 euros a pop, with a line of 20 people outside when I was there. I'm sure that line goes all day.
Yep.
So it's good money for people, but I'm not sure actually the medical qualifications or criterion that you need to kind of be able to establish this. I know the lab setup needs to be all fundamentally accredited, but given that people can do these tests at home without any training whatever, I'm wondering in the sort of the more clinical setting, actually what qualifications these fellas have.
Well, this guy was taking it very seriously, and I think he was either he was a road digger in his previous life or something, because he just wanted to drill for oil.
Or a dentist.
Oh my God, it was, yeah. It was,
root canal.
Yeah, it was incredible, Steve, honest to God. But it was also funny. It was also funny.
How was the rest of the process, Chris? Have you seen any change or any improvement in the sort of the handling, particularly on arrival in London?
It was absolutely superb. When I got into London, I was even able to go through the automated
the e-gates.
The e-gates with the passport, straight through, sailed through. Got my first message yesterday.
If you went through the e-gates, Chris, where did they check your documents?
Well, I'm assuming that they checked it and it was all online, because as soon as I went through the e-gates, within an hour, I got my message saying that from the NHS, and got that.
Right.
Got a message.
So
got
they've
a message
linked
this
it.
morning.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So
they knew that you'd arrived, in which case they obviously recorded your passport capture.
Yeah, and I had everything on my passport. I had all my documentation on there for my 3 tests.
Oh,
my results coming in. I had the QR codes on there, everything. So I'm assuming
that's both surprising but also reassuring. One, because it's government IT, never works at the best of times, but reassuring because they seem to have certainly moved on in the process. And that was always my worry. I think we touched on it a couple of weeks ago. When you open up all of these new green countries, how does one differentiate from green and amber? And what are the controls that are in place, and how do you filter people? Well, it sounds like I guess it's a risk-based approach as well, but it sounds like there's some technology on the back end that's helping that.
Yeah, and like I said, I was so pleased. The quickest I've ever gone through Gatwick in my life.
That's incredible. I think I can't use the e-gates. I've got 2 passports, and both passports that I use, I'm sure there's an HMRC flag or something on them. So I get directed to the controls each time. But I try every time, but it fails. But great if the e-gates work. I think that'll really help, because that was part of the problem with the e-gates were out of use for so long. Whereas in the rest of Europe, the e-gates were still being largely used for extra Schengen arrivals.
Yeah, the only thing that I just don't understand though, Steve, is, do you know what I mean? It's still a lot of money that you have to do for your 3 tests when you get back, and I just find, you know, the sooner they do this double vaccination jab principle, which hopefully will be in the next couple of weeks.
I think that's coming. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if the illustrious health secretary was championing that or not, but it sounds like he was the hawkish one in the cabinet. Him and Gove. So we got rid of Hancock now. We just got Gove to go.
Well, merely.
But it sounds like, I mean, he was sort of, you know, slightly hawkish on releasing the sort of the controls, the restrictions, and was slightly nervous about that. Allegedly reported in that way, but I think the rest of cabinet, including the Chancellor, who clearly has a big voice in this space, because he's the money man, was very keen to support the use of double vaccinations. Not only, you'll be pleased to hear this, Chris, but not only in the travel environment, but also in other settings, including sporting events and the like. Which I know will please you no end, because the COVID pass, they stopped at passport. The COVID pass is now out and alive and well on the NHS app.
Yeah, and it'll also please Mr. Lloyd Webber, who I think, fair play to him. He's done a great job in standing up for his particular sector, and it doesn't. I think he has. When they're doing all these other tests in different venues, like the Brit Awards and snooker and stuff, they won't let it happen in a theatre.
Well, I was at Ascot, as you know, last week, Chris. So we recorded this early last week. So we were 2 days early last week, and now we're 2 days late this week. But that's how life goes sometimes.
Yeah.
But as you know, that was a government pilot event, which was largely successful. And I read a report only a day or 2 after I'd been at Ascot, where I had to do the 2 PCRs, one the day before, or one the morning of, and one 5 days after the last day of the race meet. And curiously, they were, no surprise, they both came back negative. But not only that, they were then uploaded on the NHS app as part of your diagnostic history, which was brilliant. I mean, the NHS now seems to be, very much more digitally capable than ever before. But the other thing, Chris, was those 2 tests that I got back were negative. But I think in all of the test events that they've done, whether it was at the Crucible, the tennis, the football, the Champions League, all of those events that they've done under these trials, not Champions League, so European Youth Cup, and the cases have been almost non-existent.
Yeah, very low.
Including also, Chris, those that are coming back from amber countries now. The risk assessment surely tells us that, given that of all the arrivals from amber countries, which I think this was around 500,000 over a period, there were 4 cases. 4 out of 500,000. So it just goes to show the vaccination has broken the link between the disease and hospitalization, and the testing regime is helpful. But to what extent will that continue, I think, Chris, is the question after the vaccination largely replaced the testing. Testing.
And even though in most parts of the UK, the numbers of cases are actually climbing again.
Hospitalizations are not.
Hospitalizations and deaths are not. So it's clearly linked to the vaccination. So if they don't, and I think the delay in accepting the double vaccinations is just to make sure that those numbers, that the hospitals aren't going to be affected. But they've got to do it quickly. Otherwise, what's the incentive and what's the benefit of that fantastic vaccination rollout? It doesn't make sense.
Well, exactly. And then, of course, there's more politics at play this week, Chris, with Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Macron.
The 3Ms. The 3Ms, Stephen.
Macron,
Merkel, and madness. What a couple. Madness. They are a couple made for each other.
They are. I can't see them in such an embrace, Chris, as you might have seen Hancock and an aide this week. I'm not quite sure that I would see Macron and Merkel and.
But wouldn't that be fantastic if there was a CCTV camera hidden somewhere that relayed that behind the door?
Do you know what? I think that would be rather exciting. I think let's. I'm not sure how we kind of plot this and try and be a bit sort of matchmakers. Maybe we need some Brussels summit and you take Merkel for a drink and I'll take Macron, whom I can't stand, but I think it's an arrogant.
I'm fed up with them both.
Look, politics still at play, not helping our industry. I think there were some really good, sort of changes last week. You've seen the travel industry really respond very well to the Balearics in particular opening. Yep. I'm not necessarily a fan of all that in particular because I was flying back and forth in Club Europe and BA for less than 100 quid.
Now it's trebled.
Now I'm not quite sure it'll be 100 quid now, probably about 500 quid. So
it's trebled, Steve. It's trebled in price.
I'll probably be as the rest of the UK is now flying off to the Balearics. I'll be tootling down the I don't know, the M5 possibly and heading down to the southwest.
Yes, no, but seriously, it's trebled in price, and also because of the ineffectiveness of the recent upgrading or double vaccinations. Look at the way the share prices went across all the carriers. I mean, it's terrible.
Well, yes and no. I guess we knew these little bumps were going to sort of continue. Chris, this was not a sort of there was no silver bullet or get out of jail free card because of the vaccination program. I think whilst the public rhetoric from the airline industry or the airline CEOs will continue unabated, and they'll continue to throw bricks and rocks and missiles at the government. Yep. The win that they had last week cannot be underestimated or underplayed. Actually, so whilst they'll have a whinge and a moan and say that more countries should have been on that list, I think that's the right public message. Privately, they'll have been cock a hoop in Hangar 89 in Luton, or at Waterside at Heathrow, and maybe even in the White House in Dublin. Yep. I suspect that all three carriers will be very pleased by that news.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, whilst we're on a little bit of good news, something that I've seen as well, and we've both been pretty positive about what QR has done. And Qatar again now they're announcing their new business class suite in the 787.
Are they?
Yes.
Is this to replace the Q suite?
No, it's
no. The Q suite was never on the 78.
Right. Yeah. This is
that was a schoolboy error, I think, on their part. Surely.
Well, maybe, but this new business class suite now looks absolutely fantastic. 1-2-1 configuration, 30 seats. But it's the way they're doing it with separate doors. Every seat has access to the aisle, but it just goes to show the way they're thinking.
But how does this differ from the Q suite, Chris?
Well, I not being on the Q suite, but I think the Q suite, depending on the aircraft, I think that was a little bit different, a bit similar to the British Airways. So every seat didn't come out onto the aisle. But I'd have to, verify.
No, well, on the triple and the 350, the Q seat, every seat had aisle access, including the which I quite liked recently was the double bed in the centre because the cabin was so lightly loaded. Yeah. The crew were always very accommodating, make you up a double bed rather than your single bed on your own suite. So I thought that was rather nice. It's interesting. I mean, Qatar has always invested in the hard product, Chris.
Yep.
They've done a really good job at that, whether it's been the Hamad International Airport (HIA) and all of the associated infrastructure facilities there, the upgraded lounges, etc., or it's been in the cabin product. They've done really well. They've also done the soft product really well as well, in terms of the engagement with the crew, and the soft skills, the training, the interaction, the service standards. That's all been really, really good.
Yeah.
I think they have really stolen a lead here over this last 12 months. And we publicly. I mean, I'm happy to say publicly as I say privately as you.
Yes, I know.
Maybe that's my downfall. Maybe that's why I'll never make it into Whitehall. But that's fine. That's okay. Maybe that should be an admirable trait. I don't know. But anyway, it's done me no harm. But I think what's interesting, Chris, is Qatar they went hell for leather when everybody else was retreating.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to fly anywhere during the pandemic, he flew in Qatar.
Yep.
Now, Akbar, or Chief, as those that have worked with him or worked for him, know him as. But Chief will have he'll have really sort of taken a big step back or seat back in his chair, and thought very strategically about the impact and the cost of that decision, but actually the long-term play and the long-term benefits that it will provide to Qatar. So while some people were saying, "Oh, look at the Armada," these 7 or 8 777s all flying off together in the early days of flying cargo in the world.
Yeah.
Look at what they did, bloody Qatar this and Qatar that, and then they fell out with the Emiratis. Just after having rekindled with the Emiratis because of the red zones and bringing people through into the UK. There was lots of noise, but I think that was just white noise, to be honest with you, because I think they played a blinder.
I think strategically and tactically.
So fair play to them. I know they get some criticism. I think that's because Chief shoots from the hip, but it takes one to know one. I suspect. There's not an often nothing in Qatar always has to be evidenced by lots of business cases. They have to be a decent idea and in Chief's mind, and not make sure you don't get any red pen on the paper. And if there's no red pen on the paper when it comes back to you, off you go.
Yep.
And I think they've done really well here. So well done to Qatar. I think there are still some challenges with the model. I think they'll still have challenges with disproving the theory that they are government funded and government supported. But the government is a 100% shareholder. So why would that? Why would your shareholder not support you? Yep. But of course, the American airlines and some of the European carriers will take a dim view on that, and that's their prerogative. And so they'll still have that to contend with going forward. But great on product, great on service, and the network, the Qatar network. If you want to go anywhere,
it's exactly fantastic.
And they've kept people connected. So when people couldn't travel or wouldn't travel, Qatar have given you an option to travel, and I think that's really interesting. And as I said, all of my long haul flights, whether it be into Madrid or into London or out to the Middle East or back to Malaysia, have all been on Qatar over this last 18 months.
Yeah, and the quality of the service and the in-flight cabin service, absolutely superb.
Comes at a price, Chris. But if the shareholder has deep pockets,
second to none. Absolutely brilliant. So fair play to them. That's great. And if the chief's listening, there you go, sir. We've had a nice little bit of free publicity there.
Doing on a Sunday afternoon, Chris, but listening to us.
Yeah, you never know. He might be. Right now, another little thing you mentioned there about getting rid of Matt Hancock. What an absolute stupid own goal, hey? And of all, the little banners with the little sayings, and now his one is, wash hands, gaze into eyes, and kiss passionately. I mean, that is that's the t-shirts. Nice. The t-shirts are going to be incredible.
Your friend's obviously much politer than mine, because the ones that I received were slightly more risque.
Yes.
Chris, I don't think morally, he's done something fantastically wrong morally. Legitimately, he's done something wrong in terms of the way he has conducted himself. Actually, frankly, I don't think the British public care much about that. I feel very much for his wife and his children. I also feel for her husband and their kids.
Yes.
When I saw the photographs of these fucking, excuse my language, these fucking photographers, these paparazzi standing outside their houses, their private houses, taking photographs of them loading up the car with the husband and the kids in the house. I mean, that is criminal. I think they should be. Hancock and that bird, the Gina bird, they're fair game. Go and fill your boots, fill your papers, every single inch of space that you want, but not the wife and not the husband, and certainly not the children. That is outrageous.
Yeah, I think it's terrible. They should all be made. We
all know that's wrong, Chris. So that fundamentally wrong. But the British public, we could turn a blind eye to the Prime Minister. I don't know how many children he's got, but it's more than probably he remembers. He has a number of wives. There has been, particularly the Tory party, there have been a number of wonderful scandals and exposés over the years dating back to Profumo and Curry and Major and all sorts of fantastic, Jonathan Aitken. There's been wonderful things going on in the Tory party. It seems a very, very frivolous place to be, full of excitement and beans, as the Queen said. Matt Hancock was full of beans.
Yes.
And yes, the Tory party is full of beans. It is full of lots of wonderful relationships.
It's the swinging party, Stephen. The
great people.
Party.
But when you cross the line and when you have been spouting out and espousing and pontificating as the hawkish person that you have been in terms of these restrictions for the last 15 months and telling us what to do, you can take your rules and stick them up your arse. Because nobody, Dominic Cummings broke a rule, big deal. The SNP bird from Glasgow broke a rule, big deal. They're not the minister in charge. They're not the Secretary of State. Her Majesty's Secretary of State that is putting this in legislation and passing the legislation. It's his name that's on the statute book, Chris.
Yeah.
So for him to do that, and then to have this, that's unforgivable. The affair, yes, bad for the family, not a great look, but it happens. We all accept it. These things happen. They shouldn't, but they do. Breaking a rule is one thing, but breaking a rule with your name on it in legislation, the British public would not accept that. I'm very upset with Boris. He should have sacked him on Friday as soon as that came out. In fact, before it came out, they got notice this was coming out. The Prime Minister should have hauled him in and hauled him over the coals and kicked him out with naked into the street in Downing Street and left a man to cover his modesty with what modicum of morals he had left.
You just reminded me something. You just reminded me of my stag do.
Were you dragged naked along Downing Street, Chris?
No, mate. But for some reason, all the lads on the coach decided to strip me off, throw my clothes through the skylight, and throw me off the coach and drive away. And I was left naked. Up around Chiswick area somewhere with absolutely nothing. And I found a plastic Coca-Cola bottle, which is the only thing I could use to cover. And the long stories of all the people that came by and how I ended up getting dropped off by a police car later on the next day. But yeah,
and not a stitch.
By the time I got dropped off, I did, but none of which fitted, which was another story.
Was it a police issue over coveralls or something?
No. It's a couple who took me home, and I ended up with a mixed up.
They took pity on you.
Yeah, it was. And there's a group of girls who pulled up and wound the window down and said if I danced, they'd give me a lift, and I danced, and they just drove off laughing. And my dancing hasn't improved over the years either. But Hancock, what he did was such a stupid thing. But the big question is, Steve, what do you think about the CCTV camera that it was caught on? Because there's something strange about how he of all people would have been caught out without knowing that there were CCTV cameras there.
Well,
seriously.
So
if he could do something like that in the privacy of a room that he was familiar with, he surely would have known that there was cameras.
So the libertarian conservative in me says that there shouldn't be cameras in private offices. Ministers and secretaries of state should have private conversations with whoever they want. Private conversations, private meetings with whoever they want, without the threat of being listened to or seen or whatever. That's number one. However, Hancock has been in Secretary of State since under Theresa May in 2017, so he's not just moved to the office yesterday. He knows the office intimately.
Yes.
And when there's a bloody great black dome right above your door next to your television screen, and I just looked out, I'm not blowing smoke up my arse, but I had a call with Hancock a few months ago. I might have shared it with you at the time. But I looked at his office and I looked at the screen. I had a screen grab, not for any reason other than just it was well, certainly wouldn't be sharing it publicly. But look, it was just a memoir or a memento of the meeting that we had. And I recognised the floor tiles and the wood paneling in the wall, and I remembered exactly where this door was. And I said, "What? The camera is directed. He knows that camera's there. It's obviously been there for a long time." So that seems very peculiar to me, Chris, that he either thought or he wasn't thinking in the spur of the moment, but it didn't look like a spontaneous thing. He's done that before.
No,
he knew exactly what he was doing, checking the door and so on. So that I put to the side. So he's either stupid or naive.
But to say he's both.
He's either a knave or a fool.
Yeah, but so say he's both. and he's got carried away, and he's on a high, maybe whatever, right? For whatever reason. But the big question then is, how did it get out to the press?
Well, that's the third bit. So that one shouldn't be there in the first place. Two, if it is there, he should have known about it, or he's just a neighbor, a fool. And the third thing is, why would a security recording of a Secretary of State's office be made available to anybody other than the highest or the most vetted and security cleared people that work in the civil service and man those security, which you accept people have to have access to cameras. That's normal. Right?
Exactly.
But I suspect this is not a live camera that people are monitoring. It's not an entrance door. It's not a perimeter fence. It's in somebody's office, which means those feeds are normally recorded, let's say offline.
Yes.
And they're not sitting on monitors, people watching and monitor all the time,
and they get spot checked.
So somebody's had a gripe with him. Somebody knows how to access that footage, and they've interestingly, they sat on it for a while. So they've either waited to get the most money they possibly could out of the press, or Hancock has done something that has displeased that person or group of persons.
Yep. But that's a terrible thing, because then it makes you think, now what else? What else goes on in some of those offices that is also taped and could also be leaked out like that as well? It's an awful, awful shock. And it's something that their security.
Well, I do think the security service. I do think I watched Brandon. What's his name? Brandon, the Northern Irish secretary, this morning on Andrew Marr.
Bloody Andrew Marr.
And he's a card carrying Labour Party member. I mean, really,
oh my God, he drives me mad.
But they were saying, Brandon is the former security minister, so he was responsible for MI5. And he was asked the question, as a former security minister, would you encourage an investigation by the security services? And he was a bit limp-wristed about it, sort of non-committal, let's say. However, I think that's the way this is likely to head, Chris. This will be now a root and branch review of what cameras exist across Whitehall, across government, across the most sacred of institutions. I mean, what does that mean? There are cameras in palaces and royal palaces and things as well. I mean, what about Privy Council? What about in the judiciary? What about in the Supreme Court, or where else are these cameras being maintained? We do know that London is the most surveilled city in the world. That's reassuring for me, because I've got nothing to hide. So when I walk on the street, or I personally don't have any issues about it. The more they're looking for the bad guys, the better. As long as they're being used for the right purpose, I think there's no issue with surveillance. If that surveillance then gets into the wrong hands, I think that's the question you're asking, which is the problem. Yep,
which is a huge issue, and that's something now that people should be as much interested in as the banner. Wash hands, gaze into eyes, and kiss passionately.
It'll be forgotten about next week.
Which is the swinging Tories.
I do welcome Sajid Javid back to cabinet post, so that's a great appointment.
Yes. Sensible. Now the other
Jeremy Hunt would have been more sensible, but never mind.
Yeah. The other thing is during the lockdown, and especially up until March 2020, it actually led to a drop in fertility rates.
I saw this. I was amazed by this.
Me too. Especially as my son, bless him, he's got number 3 on the way. So he clearly hasn't been watching the box sets, and he's been very active.
Well, some families like mine were kept apart in the early parts of the lockdown. It'd be a surprise to my wife if she thought that I was considering a second child without her being physically present. That would be a rather odd arrangement. No, look, in seriousness, Chris. People had, I guess, worries and other things going on, and whilst you were sat at home all day in your joggers and your t-shirt or your boxers,
you don't look as good as you could.
Maybe you weren't looking as appealing to your better half than you normally would be, with a bit of the Fahrenheit and links. The links, gentlemen with the Fahrenheit. Remember Fahrenheit, Chris?
I do, mate. Unfortunately, I still remember Brute.
Yes, that had sort of largely been phased out by my sort of time that I started wearing aftershave. Hadn't started shaving, so there was no aftershave. It was pre-shave. but
Yeah.
a little bit of freshness. But no, look,
Henry Cooper and Kevin Keegan, brute,
I
splashed
think
all over.
it's interesting the stats show that, because if you remember, we discussed this, and it was quite well discussed at the time, that there's sort of this baby boom.
Yeah.
You know, the world would see a baby boom because of lockdown, and of course it didn't eventuate. But then it wouldn't be uncommon for a statistician or a poll to get things wrong now, would it?
It wouldn't. So we'll wait to see if there's another explosion. And then finally, the last thing I want to touch base on, because I'm getting fed up of it, and so many people, and especially when you're abroad, the amount of foreigners who ask you as if you've got like inside information on bloody Andrew and Meghan. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And now
you mean Prince Andrew and Harry and Meghan, or just Harry and Meghan?
Oh, sorry, not Andrew. Harry.
You ask about Andrew as well.
I did.
Chris.
I'm talking about, yeah. Well. To be fair, he's been involved in almost everything, so God knows what he's involved in there. But anyhow, to Harry and Meghan, it's driving me crazy, mate.
I get asked daily about Harry and Meghan. Whether it's by a black, you don't have to be overseas, Chris. I was in a black cab. So this was a week of lunches for me. As you see, I'm looking a little bit smarter than I normally would on a Sunday Sunday afternoon. I'm just about to head out for lunch to Signor Sassi, which is my wife's favourite Italian restaurant in Knightsbridge. And but this was a week of lunches for me, so there was a few black cabs around. And normally, as you know, I'm a frugal Scotsman, so I tend to like using the bus or the tube. But I had a small procedure done last Friday, as you're aware, Chris, and it's been a little bit debilitating, let's say. But I had a small surgical procedure, and I couldn't walk, basically. So I had to use London's finest black cabs, which is far better than Uber. But the point of that is, in spending time in these black cabs this week, the conversations that you can strike up with a London cabbie are fabulous. And you know, you growing up in London over the years, you know that cabbies have got a yarn. I mean, they can spin a yarn for you know, as long as you're in traffic, they'll keep talking. It was Harry and Meghan, it was Hancock, it was the lockdown, it was anti-vaxxers, it was Palestine. We had everything this week. It was a really actually, I should have recorded the session. You know, So Dicko does London cabs. You know, but we had this conversation with this taxi driver. I say we, they're all we, it's me. And I really felt that, you know, whilst the feelings across the Atlantic are very much in support of, you know, this lovely, nice world, and everything's wonderful, and we're all going to be great, and it's all wonderful, and those nasty people in the family, it's so bad to me. Not really, you know, Jesus Christ, God, give me strength. On this side of the Atlantic, totally different. Those that know the royal family, and those that know the institution, and those that know the responsibilities that come with being a royal, and the expectations that we have of our royal family. Exactly. It is a privileged position. And as you saw this week, the Sovereign Grant report was published. You maybe didn't pour over that in as much detail as I did, but you can imagine that was a great Wednesday night reading for me. But in the Sovereign, you know, it was the royal family cost the British taxpayer £81 million last year. Now, personally, I think that's great value for money. It's about £1.50 a head. I mean, frankly, I'd pay 150 quid a head. That's just my view. But and
it drops.
But
and
look,
he paid his money.
It's a quid each. It's a quid each.
Yeah.
And so the public here got a very different view, and that's solidified by, I guess, us having some, you know, I guess more. I'm not trying to be rude towards our American cousins, but you know, we are more intellectually mature in some of our thinking. We're less emotionally, less EQ, more IQ. I say that for the most part. Some of the British public challenge my assumptions sometimes, but for the most part, and you know, I think we've got a much better sort of moral compass on, maybe it's the British stiff upper lip, what we expect of these individuals. So when you pour out your heart, we sort of in the UK, well, Jesus Christ, can you be quiet now?
Too much.
You know, it's like when somebody asks you, Chris, oh, hi, morning, Chris, how are you? Oh, actually, I'm not all that great. Last week I did. That wasn't the answer I wanted.
What's
the answer, Chris? Chris, how are you?
Yeah,
I'm
great, no
fine.
problem. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Yeah. So there's that. And then you see actually that they fundamentally lied about many things.
Yeah.
You know, they lied about the money being cut off. That was in the accounts. It was
Yes,
there. It was
yeah,
visible.
yeah,
Prince
seen
Charles
that.
paid,
Yeah.
and he said that was a lie. They lied about being married 3 days before the wedding. They did not. They put the Archbishop of Canterbury in an untenable position. They lied about so many things that they cannot be trusted. Yet they pretend that their virtues are ones of, you know, upstanding citizens of the community, and we should all be a bit more like them. What utter bollocks!
Yeah, no, it's a shame.
Cod's wallet.
It's a
Cod's
shame,
wallet.
and I think he's lost so much as a lad, as a fellow, and as a man. And I think
you got some
he's
mates,
going to regret
Chris.
so much of that.
You know, some mates, like when you were talking about your stag do earlier.
Yeah.
So there are some mates that we have, right? And you know, when these lads get a girl, they disappear. You never see them again, or
Yes.
you never see them until it all falls over and they come back 6 months later.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or actually, even worse, I mean, the mates you've had for years, you know, they disappear. You go off to the wedding. It's all very polite. It's all very nice.
Yeah.
But the wife has them completely under the thumb. They've changed the person beyond recognition. And I have to say, no, some of that's for good, some less good. But I have to say, she is quite something. She has destroyed or put question to the institutions of the monarchy, the values of the monarchy, and she's blatantly lied about it. Yet she pretends that she's the goody two shoes. And that clown Harry clearly doesn't have much cerebral matter between his two bloody big ears. What's it say? The ginger and the whinger. You know, he's just fallen for it. Hook, line, sinker.
But what a shame! Such a shame, though.
Lovely lad as well. He was one of the boys, you know. He's out there smoking weed, you know, out there in Chelsea every weekend getting hammered.
Oh yeah, but that's not. We got to be careful there. That's not something to encourage. But
running naked around a pool table or a billiards table in Las Vegas. Yeah, he was a lad. It's great.
That's why I said I said lad without elaborating. But no. But I think it's such a shame, and I think he's going to regret it. He's going to regret all of that. And you know what Meghan has managed to do, and she's not really got a great track record with her own family and friends and everybody else. Which
look at how she treated her father,
which is a terrible issue. But coming back to Andrew and my earlier Freudian slip, but he's so quiet now, isn't he? And Edward has popped up.
Stepped up.
Yeah, he's after all those years in the wilderness, very
he's
sensible.
Found his place.
Yeah,
because I think, talking of wives, his wife Sophie,
she's a darling.
She's delightful, and I think you know, she's very well thought of. She's by the Queen's side all the time. She's very well thought of by her father-in-law.
Yeah,
lovely to see her daughter Lady Louise Windsor, riding the carriage, Prince Philip carriage ponies around Windsor Great Park. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah,
and I think Prince Philip would, you know, he'd like that too. But Edward stepped up, and Edward was the wet fish.
Yes.
You know, was it? It's a knockout, Chris. Do you remember the?
It was. Yeah. That's right. And he tried to organise so many things, and
he went into talking of Lloyd. He went to work for Lloyd Webber. Actually, he went to the Really Useful Theatre Company and worked for Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber as a stagehand. Yeah. And he went into the Royal Marines. He left after 6 weeks. Couldn't hack it. I mean, look, good on him. I mean, I think it's nice to see him stepping up. I think he's a genuinely nice guy. I think he's you'd never see it. Whilst he's made a few gaffes along the time, but everybody does. I make gaffes every day. Yeah. But it's nice to see him supporting the family and stepping up in a place that I'm sure his father would really respect and think he's done a good job, and good on him. So as Andrew's gone into oblivion, Edward has picked up the mantle. Good for him.
Which happens, and it's going to be interesting to see where Hancock pops up in the reshuffle, because he'll definitely be doing something with a little less exposure. I think. I don't think he's going to be dropped completely.
He needs 2 years in the wilderness, Chris. Minimum.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is he'll be given something.
The problem it gives Johnson now is Johnson's scapegoat has now gone. And look, whilst I wouldn't, you know, I won't be asked to contribute in the inquiry, but my view is this: I don't think we should have an inquiry now until this is resolved and over. And I think next year is the right time to do that.
Yeah,
I think they've proven right on that. However, Johnson will be held over the coals, and Johnson would probably have used Matt Hancock a lot to deflect some of the attention from him. So when the inquiry does start, I'm wondering how that will play out for the Prime Minister.
yeah.
Time will tell, I guess.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? You know, like some of the soaps that are on, whether it's EastEnders or whatever, you think, how can people sit there and think what else can go wrong for the storyline? And then you look at what's happening in politics, and it's there all the time. It's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy.
Well, as I said, I think it's to be forgotten about next week, Chris.
Yeah, but much like a lot of the
It
stories.
won't be forgotten about by those affected, particularly his wife and that poor husband.
Yeah. Terrible.
And the children.
Yeah.
They don't think the impact is we see the impact. You might have a chuckle, we might see the odd meme or send a little, a video to our friends, WhatsApp groups and stuff. That's quite amusing for us, but it's just not amusing for people that have been hurt. No. And to see so much of it everywhere, it must be such a terrible time for them. So I think with that, we should most definitely. There wasn't much aviation in this week's show, Chris, but maybe
no,
we'll
there's not much.
Next
there's
week.
not much.
I think next week we're doing the restaurant review, are we? Is that the
we are?
The plan?
Restaurant review next week. Yeah. Yes. What do we call it? The Lounge Lizard Larry. Yes.
Lounge Lizard Larry's restaurant review.
Yes, mate. Yeah. No, but sometimes there's enough you can talk about the same old thing, and I think that's a problem as well. But the one most important thing everywhere, Steve, if you're looking at the subject matter we spoke about last week about training, leadership, and new approaches to the way the business should be run. The shortage of people everywhere now is really becoming apparent, and now it's driving hourly rates up in some of the markets. It's driving salaries up again because there just isn't the expertise anymore.
Yeah,
it's going to be a big. That's going to be a big issue now. Come after Christmas, that's going to be a big issue for next year.
Well, I look forward to discussing that particular issue with you in person tomorrow, Chris.
Yes, indeed, sir. Right. Listen, take care of yourself. All the best. Enjoy your lizard jumping, your lounge lizard jumping, and your experiences with the finer arts of food and beverage, dare I say. And we'll see you next week, mate. Take care of yourself.
Cheers, Chris.
All the best.